Hi, everybody. The theme for today's talks is finding common ground. But in order to find what the common ground is, I believe you need to know exactly what the ground is that you're standing on. So I'm going to talk about the one thing, and this is the concept of me. So let's get egocentric for a minute. During our teens and 20s, we're at a formative age of understanding the beginnings of who we are. Most people define that through religious and political beliefs, but I think it's something much deeper. Who you are is directly tied to what drives you and what motivates you. Until you understand the basics of your personality, do you really understand yourself? I've been obsessed and vexed with the question of who am I for as long as I can remember. We have buckets that we put ourselves into and things that we identify ourselves with. Through school, it's am I a geek or a jock or the popular kid or a hipster, but I always had trouble identifying myself in those different categories and those labels. So the first instinct we have as people is to label ourselves. So I would do that. So here I am. I am a CEO, I am a brother, I am an uncle, a son, a boyfriend, I'm a black belt and a sensei, I'm an outdoorsman and a technologist, I'm a Christian, a Ravens fan, a graphic designer, and occasionally a pirate. As you can see, I wear many hats and many identities, but it was at that point that I looked at myself and said, you know, there's more to this than just what you are. It's who you are that really matters. So I was reminded then of one of my favorite quotes, and I know at events like this, you're typically used to hearing from the brilliant minds of people like Aristotle or guys like Steve Jobs, but this quote is, well, let's just say a little bit more me. It's not who you are underneath, but what you do that defines you. Yes, I know I'm quoting Batman Begins, but the quote is incredibly rational to learning about yourself. So then I sat down and I said, okay, what have I done that makes up who I am? I'm running a company at the age of 25. I've been passionately involved in the martial arts since the age of 4, and I now teach and spread that knowledge to children and adults in my community. I create things and I innovate. I spend most of my free time in the outdoors, and I am dedicated to my family. I'm a strange mixture of high tech on one end and kind of lost in a period of time in history where the most advanced technology was a sharpened blade and plate armor. So now that I've done that and I've kind of put together a defined list of what I do and who I am I really any closer to really understanding who I am? No. This is simply a resume. It's not an insight into my intrinsic style and philosophy and emotions. Unfortunately, however, this is where the world makes decisions and determinations of who we are. They look at me and they say, college dropout, not good. Young entrepreneur, good. Martial artist and a fighter, not good. Sensei and a teacher, good. The world makes judgments on the labels that are applied to us without really knowing and understanding the motivators and intrinsic pieces of your persona that actually make up who you are. This is where other people come into the equation. By our human definition, something really isn't unless you can compare it to something that is. So in order to really figure out who I am, we have to understand how we relate to others. And this information doesn't come in the form of labels, it comes in the form of interactions. I distinctly remember the first time I took a personality assessment. It wasn't so much the results as the process that gave me insight into who I am. I was fascinated by the information that I could learn about how I react to situations, how you interact with people, what motivates you, what frustrates you, what drives you crazy, and truly just what makes you happy. I enjoyed the process so much that I went on to form a company with one of my closest friends that is completely centered around the principle of personality and what drives and motivates you. The more time I've spent diving into human emotions and traits, the more I realize personality is not just something you put in a bottle, it's something that evolves and changes and is made up of hundreds of facets of our character. Traditional personality assessments have their limitations. They may tell you if you're an extrovert or an introvert, but I truly believe as we study the makings of who we are various degrees of elements of our personality types. And each of those are kind of distinguished by the situations that we are a part of. One of my favorite things to do in life is observe. I love to watch people and things, animals and places, and just learn from them and understand what is behind them. I think the more we pay attention to our environment, the more we understand ourselves. It sounds so trivial, saying, who are you? But I really believe it is an evolution and a discovery to figure it out. It's so easy to make judgments about others through observation, but we as people find it incredibly hard to make judgments about ourselves. I feel like I am just now at the beginning of understanding who I am, but the more emphasis I put on that understanding, the more successful my life has become. When you try to understand the traits and the preferences and things that are behind yourself and others, you're able to make decisions that help to make you happier. So how do we do that? Harness your personality. I talked to a successful entrepreneur the other day, and he told me that the turning point in his life and his career path was when he took a personality assessment and realized that although he was good at what he was doing, he didn't enjoy it, and therefore he wasn't successful. So at that moment, he dropped everything and decided to not follow another person or another idea, but really just to stop and follow himself and create a company that he was passionate about, that was driven by what motivates him. Now, I'm not saying by any means the personality assessments are the end-all, be-all, but rather they are a tool in your belt to help quantify who we are relative to those around us. But the question is, how does all of this knowledge about who we are pertain to crossing the divide and working with others? I could speak from experience in running a startup company that you're constantly dealing with investors and deadlines, the unknowns, all of these variables, the struggles of innovation. But it's often the human capital that is the hardest part to manage and the part that can sink the ship. I believe if you know what frustrates you, and you know what motivates you, and you observe the actions of others, that you'll not just be able to harness your personality, but harness the personality of those around you. And you can find ways to maximize on your strengths and minimize on conflict. For instance, I am very much a creative and inventive personality type, and I love to lead. But when it comes to the detail-oriented portion of things, or keeping things organized and orderly, I am definitely not the guy for the job. And I know that when I'm working with my development team, they are highly analytical, very logical people. And if I appeal to that logic standpoint in discussion, then our discussions and conversations are far more productive, and we're able to accomplish so much more. It's amazing to me, the more introspective you become, and the deeper you look inward at yourself and your personality, the more things you can use it for. And I think that in itself is kind of a new concept. When I say to someone, you can use your personality, they look at me kind of like you're looking at me right now. But it's true. The more we can understand it and the more we can understand ourselves, the more valuable it becomes as a tool in what we're doing in our day-to-day lives. I believe that we can make smarter decisions by focusing on our personality and how that decision will make us feel. From big life decisions like where should I live, where should I work, who should I marry, to simple ones like what am I going to do this weekend, what am I going to have for dinner. I think the more we bridge the gap between our personality and our decision making, the happier we will be with our overall life and our selections. It is difficult to stay that attuned to who we are and constantly watching our personalities, but personalization technology is making that an ever simpler task to help us weed through the bad decisions and discover the ones that fit us on every level. So I will conclude with an observation. While I was in college, I had a great deal of friends that were floating kind of from class to class and from major to major. And when I would ask them, what are you doing with your lives? What's your plan? Many of them would respond to me that I am finding myself. And many of them still are finding themselves today. And I think that's a good thing because we all should be looking to find ourselves more. But I encourage you to, no matter how hard it is or how risky or challenging it may become, follow your personality. And when you find it, use it. Thank you.